Hi, David. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. The promise of democracy has always been a tension between what is fair and what is efficient. I hope that when we think about what's going to happen with media consolidation, that we don't sacrifice our freedoms for corporate efficiency. We are some of the most entertained people on the planet, but we don't know a lot about what's going on in the world because of the way our corporate media is structured. We as a country can do better. We deserve better. Here in the Pacific Northwest, many of us are forced to watch Canadian television to figure out what's happening in our own country. We can do better. We deserve better. The question that's not being asked is what happens to the small local newspapers here in the Seattle area that benefit our communities if the corporate pressure begins to squeeze them. We have some of the finest newspapers in the country. Colors Northwest, the International Examiner, Seattle Gay News, Northwest Asian Weekly, and Eat the State are some of the best publications in this country. We're not addressing what's going to happen to them as corporate media gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And what happens when these newspapers get smaller and smaller and smaller because of what's happening to the ad revenue and the dollars involved with that. The final point, real quickly, is what happens when we start struggling with these oligopolies. What happens when Disney owns ABC? What happens when General Electric owns a network? Who's held accountable? When is enough enough?
Thank you, Mr. Ortiz.
Thank you.
Bill Bachmann.
Thank
Patricia.
you. I'm Bill Bachmann, and I'm an American citizen. That's why I'm here. I can't help but notice that the panel up here consists of 3 Bush Republicans and 2 Democrats. And it seems to me that this rush to change the rules could possibly allow this or a further administration to consolidate power with his or her benefactors and quash opposition to their programs or policies. Running this hearing with 5 days notice and then trying to jam media consolidation through by mid-December, to me is damning evidence by the total abuse of the process itself that you're up to some kind of no good. If this is a legitimate issue, then it deserves and demands a legitimate public process to determine the outcome. There's no public benefit to media consolidation. The only benefits which accrue are to provide more money to those who already have big money, more power to those who are already in power, and to provide the ability to emphasize a particular point of view to the exclusion of other points of view. It provides the ability to impose a virtual monopoly over what stories are covered, what issues are talked about, and the singular point of view favored by the owner on those issues. Local coverage suffers most, and I think that's been well covered by the other speakers. Allowing those with big money and big power to virtually control our political discourse severely undermines the well-informed electorate required to run a successful democracy, and that's a heck of a lot more important than a bump in profits for a handful of wealthy corporations.
Thank you, Mr. Bachmann.
You ought to be ashamed of yourselves for not respecting the democracy you live in.
Are you Sammy? Yeah. And she's number 47. Sammy, you have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Sammy Kuba, and I am a senior at Ballard High School. Commissioners, I am not going to tell you that you shouldn't further consolidate media ownership. I'm going to tell you that you cannot further consolidate media ownership. Because the future well-being of the entire nation is at stake. It sounds cliche, but it's really true that we, the youth, are the future of the world. I experienced first-handedly the godlike influence the current media has on young people of the nation. I grew up watching my older sister, my best friends, even my brother buy blue-colored eye contacts, bleach their hair blonde, starve themselves, and OD on protein shakes, all to struggle for the unattainable, unrealistic standard of beauty that is shown everywhere. Now, I never even attempted these things, not because I was secure, but because I didn't even think that I had the potential to be as beautiful as the people that I had idolized. And it's not just me or my family, it's everybody. It's just so sad to see all the bright and potential teens all around me so insecure and self-loathing because the media all around us is a constant reminder of what we apparently should be like. Even the media's lame attempts to create real or all-natural figures are a far cry from what truly real people are like. This is all because the media is owned by just a few people with similar values and interests, and there just isn't enough diverse ownership of the media to provide genuine and diverse figures to the world. Not only did I give up on ever thinking I could be beautiful, but I gave up on my dreams as becoming a successful filmmaker because I was a non-white female. The current film industry makes it nearly impossible for someone like me to become even remotely successful. I am just like the majority of youth in America. If I can't be beautiful and if I can't follow my dreams, what can I be? An insecure, self-loathing, shallow, and immoral fatalist. Is that who you want to rule the future world? If not, then stop further consolidation of media ownership.
Thank you, Ms. Kuba. Amanda Kumbau.
My name is Amanda Kumbo. I grew up here in Seattle, and I am the Northwest Regional Secretary for the Hip Hop Congress, and I'm also a supporter of the 206 Zulu Nation. I see some of my brothers and sisters from the Zulu Nation here in the room. The Universal Zulu Nation was created at the foundation of hip hop as an alternative to gang life, which was proliferating at that time in New York City. I have not seen one of my brothers or sisters in the Zulu Nation on mainstream television, radio, or in the newspaper. Recently, I don't know if you all are fathers, but if you are, just try to picture for a second your daughter or your son when they were 2 years old. Well, my daughter at 2 years old came home singing Laffy Taffy, shake that Laffy Taffy, shake that Laffy Taffy. That refers to a part of the female genitalia that I was not prepared to explain to her at that age. And that's what she hears on mainstream radio, and that's a brand of hip hop that I'm not a part of and did not grow up in. I grew up with a local AM station that you could barely get in on the dial called KKFX, K-Fox, and it was bought out in the early 90s by Radio Disney. And we have Zulu Radio. We also have Zulu TV, which is Hip Hop 101. You can only listen to these stations and see these stations at various parts of the day, very specific parts of the day or night. I don't see a lot of youth here, and I don't see a lot of the hip hop community here. That's because this wasn't broadcast on any Clear Channel stations. I'm against the commodification of the media because they set the standard of what's cool, what's hip, just like the young girl was saying, for our youth. I don't want that for my daughter. I don't want that to be what's hip. These kids are too busy shaking their Laffy Taffy to care about politics, and it's because of hip hop that I even care about politics.
Thank you, Ms. Kumbau.
Thank you very much.
Bill Whipple. My name is Bill Whipple. I'm former news director for Cairo Radio, and I have 58 years' experience in broadcasting. The arguments to further relax media ownership are built on fables perpetrated by lobbyists for mega media. Fable 1, there are twice as many radio stations on air since 1970. Therefore, concentrated ownership is bringing us more outlets for entertainment and information. Fact. The majority of those news stations are automated. Walk through most multi-station operations and you will not see an announcer. Those are not radio stations, they are high-tech jukeboxes. Local radio stations that in Seattle produce local news reflecting the cultural richness through a variety of locally produced programs. Fact. Only 2 Seattle stations have a valid radio newsroom. The culture is not covered by the major media. Fable 3, every year broadcasters join with their counterparts to raise millions of dollars for thousands of charities. Out of the thousands of charities and nonprofits that ask for free coverage on local radio and TV, most are not given the time of day. The charities receive publicity because they have PR staffs that make the little guy look like a pauper. The only security of all is a free press. The force of public opinion cannot be resisted when permitted freely to be expressed. The agitation it produces must be submitted to. It is necessary to keep the waters pure. Thomas Jefferson to Lafayette, 1823. Does this mean that the writer of the Declaration of Independence is wrong?
Thank you. Robert Zugville.
Thank you. Thank you for hearing us out tonight. My name is Robert Zviershina. I was born in New York State in a small town called Liberty, which was fitting because my parents were immigrants who came to the United States seeking freedom. They came here in 1968 as political refugees from Czechoslovakia, which, as you know, was under Soviet rule at that time. And it was a terrible place. It was a country where the government arrested and detained people without cause, evidence, or charges, where prisoners were held indefinitely, denied legal counsel, and tortured. It was a place where even the most blameless citizens were spied on, phone lines tapped, private correspondence intercepted, and personal records scrutinized without warrant. And of course, all of these nefarious activities were buttressed by a complicit, monolithic media network which served to promote, protect, and perpetuate a tiny minority's prerogatives of power and privilege. My parents are no longer alive, and in a way I'm glad, because it would break their hearts to see their beloved America subject today to these same abuses of authority. It kind of breaks my heart too. But unlike Soviet Czechoslovakia, we still have some, not much, but some, diversity in media ownership. You commissioners are faced with a monumental choice, and I hope you will do some deep soul searching before you decide. A plurality of voices is the very definition of democracy. It is imperative that you act to preserve the rules as they are and say no to further consolidation. To do otherwise would be a betrayal of the American people and the ideals on which this great country was founded. Thank you.
Jerome Eggs.
Hi there, thanks for having me this evening. My name is Jerome Eggs. I'm the host and producer of the Mass Mix Session with DJ Defcon on KSVR 91.7 FM up in Mount Vernon, Washington, and also Robin Carnine's nephew. And tonight I'm here to say I'm a member of the Upper Skagit tribe and a resident of the Swinomish Indian Reservation community. And my community is so rural that in the year 2007, now almost 2008, I can't even get DSL or high-speed internet. I can barely get access to dial-up internet service, and also portions of my home, I can't even use my mobile phone. You know, so when told that it might even be made more possible for a major corporation that wants little more than to make money to control every aspect of public media and broadcast information that I see, hear, and listen to, especially seeing how coming from a rural native community with already limited resources for members of our community when it comes to accessing media, broadcast sources of information, quite frankly, gentlemen, it's downright scary to think those already limited resources could further fall prey to the fiscal agenda of some major corporation by the loosening of restrictions on the media outlets that they're allowed to control. What happens when those underserved voices, be they the rural residents of my community, voices of community leaders and activists, or voices of young people aren't heard. You know, it's hard enough for people like myself, who, might I add, I was the only broadcaster in Washington State selected to be a delegate at a world radio conference, and I couldn't even get a major media outlet to give me coverage, to give me some recognition in the whole entire region. I was the youngest delegate in the entire world selected. So gentlemen, I say to you in closing, I stand here before you to say that it's just not right to put the realm of public media information in the hands of major corporations to further consolidate their power and monetary agendas. Thank you.
Thank you. Sue Wilson.
Commissioners, I'm a broadcast journalist of 20 years, currently making a film about media issues called Broadcast Blues. On July 16th of this year, I filed a Freedom of Information Act request with your Media Bureau to find out how many petitions to deny broadcast licenses are currently pending in front of the FCC. I also asked, when is the last time any station ever had a license taken away? By law, the FCC is to respond to me within 22 days. It has been 4 months. I have heard nothing. The petitions to deny licenses are the only means that we the people have to hold stations accountable to the public interest. What is it going to take for you to actually take away a station's license? Does somebody have to die? Because guess what? Somebody did.
Hey, Carter, is anybody dying in there? We got a guy that's just about to die. It's 30 signs for me. Get the insurance on that, please. Jennifer, I heard you're not doing too well.
My head hurts. They keep telling me that it's the water.
This is what it feels like when you're drowning.
A mother of 3 children died during that profit-raising stunt. When the attorney for the family of Jennifer Strange wrote to the FCC asking that the station's license, KDND, be taken away, Chairman Martin, they were so impressed because you got back with them and said, we will immediately turn this over to our Enforcement Bureau. It has been 10 months. The station still broadcasts, and they've heard nothing. This is unacceptable. If you will not stand up for we the people, then I have news for you. We the people are standing up for ourselves. This is our media, and we are taking it back.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
We're taking it back.
Susan McCabe. Susan McCabe. Susan McCabe. Please come forward.
I'd like to thank the FCC and Kevin Martin, you in particular, for coming to Seattle on such short notice. A 100 years ago, I was a political science major at UC Berkeley, and I'm really glad to see that the free speech movement is alive and well in Seattle. Al Gore, in his new book, The Assault on Reason, writes that the large conglomerates are apparently sometimes tempted to bend their news programming choices to support the achievement of commercial objectives. The news divisions, which used to be seen as serving a public interest and were subsidized by the rest of the network, are now seen as profit centers designed to generate revenue and sometimes to advance the larger agenda of the corporation that owns them. General Electric, does that sound familiar? They have fewer reporters, fewer stories, smaller budgets, less travel, fewer bureaus, less independent judgment, more vulnerability to influence by management, and more dependence on government sources and canned public relations handouts. He goes on to say, the movie Network, winner of the Best Screenplay Oscar in 1976, was presented as a farce. but was actually a prophetic warning of the dangers of transforming news, which plays such an important role in our democracy, into profit-driven entertainment programming.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman.
Hello, I'm Jamin Shively. I'm partner manager for Microsoft's online advertising syndication business and also an internet entrepreneur. Big media has not fulfilled its crucial democratic function of challenging and debating the decisions, actions, and statements of the ruling powers in the federal government. Thank you. Why? And this is one key part of it. There are other answers, but one key part is because of big media's size. The sheer size, profitability, and organizational dynamics of the huge enterprises which constitute big media, including my own employer, make them particularly prone to content manipulation and filtering through ownership, big budget advertising, and other mechanisms, especially by certain key industries, most notably the oil industry and the military-industrial complex. Just take a look at what big media has done, or rather not done, relative to the irrefutable facts which have resulted in the deaths of over 1 million innocent Iraqi civilians since 2002. Fact number one. George W. Bush took office in 2001 after losing both the electoral vote and the popular vote. Fact number two, the decision to invade and occupy Iraq was made based on blatant lies put forth by the President, Vice President Cheney, Secretary of State, and other leaders. Fact number three, as a direct result of the U.S. invasion and occupation of Iraq, over 1 million innocent Iraqi civilians have been killed. Fact number four, despite these blatant crimes and an abundance of evidence, there is no discussion of impeachment of Bush in Congress. Big media reports none of these facts, much less delves into their analysis. To the contrary, they portray George W. Bush as moral, conscientious, caring human, much as the German media portrayed Hitler during World War II.
Thank you, Mr. Shively. Scott Michaels.
Hello.
Scott, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for taking the time to come to Seattle and have these hearings. I feel a little bit out of my element because I'm a broadcaster, and so I'm a little pro-broadcaster because, you know, that's my job. But I want to talk a little bit about research. That was a word we heard earlier from one of the panelists, and what research really means. I've been working in 10 different markets, 10 different radio stations in the past 10 years. And we've done research at almost every single one of our stations, and that simply is asking the community, what do you want? What do you want out of your radio station? And while research has kind of gotten a bad rep, I feel like here in Seattle, the ability of our radio group to own multiple stations has given us those resources to do research. I can honestly say, being involved in the budgeting process for our stations, if we did not own 3 different broadcast outlets, our research budget would be cut dramatically and may not even exist. So while research is certainly objectionable to some, we believe it is what makes us local and what gives us our local importance. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Scott. Leela Kataya. Leela, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Leela Kataya, and I'm here today as a youth media educator and an independent media maker. I'm a media educator with Real Girls because I think it's essential that youth have the knowledge to interpret the corporate media messages bombarding them, and the skills to add their diverse voices to an ever more monolithic media system. I became a media maker myself after I attended my first protest against the WTO in 1999. I saw for myself what happened in the streets that day, and then I came home and turned on the TV. And the corporate news I saw that evening turned me into a media activist because every single channel was telling the same false story. My voice, the voice of the people, was completely cut out of the equation. Now I make media with Pepper Spray Productions, the video arm of the Seattle Independent Media Center. We work with minority-led community groups like Seattle Young People's Project and the Community Coalition for Environmental Justice to cover their issues and events, ones that they don't see in the corporate media. We're grateful for public access TV outlets like SCAN for providing us with our own channels of distribution. But the truth is that all of the airwaves ultimately belong to us, the people, and we need more access, more distribution networks, more diversity of media ownership. Commissioners, I demand that you roll back the rules allowing for media consolidation and make the way for more independent media. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kataya. Blair Anundson.
Good evening. My name is Blair Anundson, and I'm the Program Associate for WashPIRG, the Washington Public Interest Research Group. We're a nonpartisan, nonprofit citizen advocacy organization with over 35,000 members across the state of Washington. WashPIRG works on a variety of public interest issues, including public health, consumer rights, good government, and campaign finance reform. The public's awareness of all of these issues is profoundly impacted by media ownership. When corporate media decides to shy away from an issue that might affect advertising revenue, the public discourse suffers and the visibility of our crucial public interest issues is diminished. Much needed debate is stifled and our citizenry is less informed. Now, in past years, we in the Seattle area have had access to more media outlets than many other cities, but that diversity has slowly eroded. And will change even further if rules around media ownership are relaxed. Now, in preparing for this hearing, I heard story after story from people who felt that local news coverage and content has decreased in recent years, and I've certainly experienced this trend as an advocate and organizer. There are fewer reporters and news sources covering state and local policy issue debates than in the past, and this is a direct result of consolidation. The number of independent voices is slowly but drastically reduced, meaning fewer viewpoints. And while corporate media has proved that they will always look out for their bottom line, we're asking that the FCC follow its mandate and look out for the public interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anundson. David Griffith.
My name is Brian, and I live in Portland. Since most of what I was planning to say has already been said, I'd just like to read some thoughts I've put down to paper over the last few hours. We've heard some people in the industry describe the rules that govern media ownership as outdated. They say deregulation is necessary for them to compete with the internet. The fact that the internet is simply there isn't why more and more people are getting their news there. It's the media's own piss-poor reporting that's driving people away. We do know that when media outlets merge, the result is layoffs. And how does fewer reporters lead to more news? I don't want to hear about what's happening in my own community from the AP Newswire as if they reported it in the first place. The public interest is not merely what the public is interested in, despite what that fellow from the NAB said earlier. Maybe if these people would show a little bit more respect for the public, and maybe if they had a little bit more pride in their journalistic roots, we wouldn't be fleeing from the internet desperate for a real source of news. Commissioners, how can you expect an informed and diverse public to get involved in this democratic process when you only give us a few days' notice? Are you even serious about this? It seems like you're just going through the motions to placate the growing public opposition, and then you'll just vote to deregulate the media anyway, regardless of the overwhelming opposition at every single hearing you've held.